they're writing those comments. Mark Spears is one of us. We root for Mark Spears. It's almost like Dusty Rhodes or something in wrestling, where he was the common man. People heard my story of how comics was kind of held for me for so many years. I tried to break in the 90s, and they were like, nope, you'll never be a comic book artist. It was a neat thing to come back around, because I thought comics and me won't ever be able to be on the same page, basically. If you really think you have something good there, don't let them just say no. Find a way to do it yourself.
All right, well, here we are with kind of a new legend onto the scene, Mark Spears. Mark, it's good to have you on the channel. Big fan of your work. It's been something that has been exciting, at least from my vantage, to be able to see the explosion of all of your work onto the comic book scene as of the last few months. But yeah, thanks so much for taking the time and hopping on. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Fan of the show. Watched it many times. Had no idea who you were. So when I was watching that, I was like, oh, and then we meet each other on Brian's show. So I'm thrilled. So yeah. Thank you for asking me to come on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so interesting. Like the last few months, like your work has taken over the secondary market and the hot lists in a way that I don't feel like I've seen this type of explosion in recent years in any kind of way that's similar to what you're doing with like Monsters and all the covers you're doing with Spawn and stuff. Maybe there's been other artists that have been hot, Daniel Warren Johnson and Peach Momoko and things of that nature, but there's nothing kind of quite like this where you'll be literally like 8 out of 10 books on a cover price list. I guess what's your sort of initial reaction to finding out these types of things, or like how much attention do you even pay to like hot lists and secondary market?
I didn't even know they existed. The hot list stuff existed until I was in Disney World in 1st of July, and a local comic book store friend of mine wrote me when I was down there and said, "Hey, that Lobo cover you did is on the top like top 5 or something." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I thought maybe it meant comics that came out that week. And so I didn't really understand what that list was. Not till I got back from Disney World and I looked it up and I went, wait, it's what's trending right then. So it was beat out by like Deadpool's first appearance, and something X-Force something. So it was beat out by what was about to come out in the movie industry. So that was interesting to me because I was like, whoa, so that thing, I didn't know there was a trending list. So you're basically saying of all comics that exist, these are what are trending right now. These are what people are going and buying on eBay and aftermarket. And that was shocking to me. I was like, whoa, that's amazing. And then I never hit it again until I think Monsters came out late September. And that was amazing. And I think like what you were saying, it hasn't happened much. I know it's never happened to the amount of what's going on with the numbers. It might have happened with books getting really hot and being like, 90 copies selling that week in the aftermarket, but it's never happened where like the Kickstarter books that I had on that came out just last year are selling for over $1,000 something a piece. That's insane for a Kickstarter book. And there were some other huge numbers. So, and the amount, at first somebody was saying, "Hey, Mark, you're selling. If you type in your name, 60 of your items are selling that day, right?" Then they would say, "Nope, now it's up to 90. Now it's up to 100," and it just kept steamrolling. And I understand you're going to have stuff like Dave Stevens, that documentary came out. So his stuff shot up.
Right.
But you got to remember there's only so much quantity of that and how much people pay for that stuff. So I think it has been something that is unique and hasn't been experienced before in the comic industry to this magnitude, because you got to think back when you had what I would call the comic book greats, the image guys, eBay was I don't even think eBay was a thing back then. What, in '92? So if it was so in its infancy. You weren't buying comics on the aftermarket like that. So, and then also you wouldn't go and get a Spawn or a Youngblood or an X Force or an X-Men #1 in the aftermarket because there were so many of them. There were millions and millions printed, so there was no reason to go out and buy that. So that is in itself is very interesting. And just looking at it from a comic book point of view, I'm intrigued, taking myself out of it, just like what's going on. That's odd because again, I make no money off the aftermarket. I make none off I don't have time to sell my own stuff, and I don't make any money off the top 10 list or anything like that. So but it's really interesting. And it does show me, I think that fans really enjoy my work, and that makes me feel great. Um, does that translate into because people will say that's the number one question I get. They usually start out by this is not even interviews. This is just people writing me on Instagram or Facebook. How does it feel to be the hottest comic book artist right now? Right. And I'm like, I don't know what to answer with that because honestly, nothing is different on the business side of it. If you think about it, I'm starting Spawn 77. I was already going to be doing that 2 years ago. That's been in development for 2 years. Monsters is still doing the same. I was already working for DC before any of this happened. The only thing different, I believe, that's happened because of the success of Monsters and the other covers being on the hot list and stuff would be I worked for Dynamite. At that time, I wasn't working for Dynamite. I remember I tried to get a Thundercats cover at one time, and I couldn't even find the right people to contact. So that would be the only thing that's changed is I was able to go and do a few Dynamite covers. Other than that, no, I mean, I don't have other publishers writing me, asking me, "Hey, will you do a cover of this or cover of that?" I do have a few, but we're talking about very, smaller publishers, right? That
Yeah.
nothing higher than what I've already done. So, Marvel's not knocking on my door. I don't have other image projects, where they're saying, "Hey, would you do a cover for this?" or "Would you be interested in doing a series?" or something like that. So it is weird because a lot of people think, "Oh man, you found all this success and everything." Honestly, yeah, if you look at it in the aftermarket and the top 10 list, but in terms of publishers and editors, I'm still the exact same guy I was 6 months ago. They do not want to hire me. They don't want to, it's weird. I look at it as I'm like the fans' choice. If you get what I'm saying, is it's more of the fans are driving this, and that's great, and that's who actually pays me is when a fan wants something. That's how it goes. So, and I'll still stay relevant as long as they want me in the industry. But it is weird that no other offers come in. I mean, before even started the Spawn 77, I haven't done a Spawn cover and since gosh, I wanna say 23. Maybe I did one in 20. Oh, I did one early 24. And I haven't done a Spawn cover. The ones you see come out are really old, like the Cygor cover that's coming out for Spawn. I did that in May of 23. So I'm not even getting asked to do covers or anything by any other company. And it's but now if they watch this and then I start getting all these flood of emails like, "Oh, we'll have you do a cover." Sorry, I'm busy now with Spawn, but it's a very interesting thing to me. I even got here's a sample of that too. Is okay. You would think Monsters is very popular, the series, and it's actually broke set records, not even broke them, set records that have never been set before. It's done something a comic book's never done in the industry. Number 2 had higher sales than number 1, which has never happened since Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 80s. Number 3 had a 239% increase. The number 2 never has happened before in any kind of comics ever. Really, if there's any increase, it's, maybe a very small percentage, not 239% after we just broke a record for number 2. So the Monster series is doing something no other series has ever done. So you would think the publishers out there who all passed on Monsters would sit there and go, oh, well, maybe Mark's got something there. Maybe we should relook into this. There was a pitch I had going out in July for a story. And I sent it to everybody. And I won't say who, but one publisher wrote me back in, January, and said, hey, Mark, we're going to pass on this. They finally wrote me back and said, we're passing on this. Thanks, though, for sending it to us. And I'm sitting there thinking, number one, even if they said, hey, we would love to publish this, I would not allow them to publish that right then, because I can just do it myself now. I don't need, a big publisher to take on that project and take a bunch of the profits of it. But it's just amazing to me that I'm still getting turned down no matter where I go on projects like that. It's a conversation I've had before with Brian and stuff. Is I really believe the industry's here to the right, and then you got you got two halves though of the industry, and then you have the aftermarket top 10 list, and they don't pay attention to each other.
Yeah. To that point, I think it's really interesting because there's a lot of points that I want to actually touch on as you're talking. But even going back to the hot list stuff, and someone who does a lot of coverage of books that sell in the aftermarket, I mean, that's typically what I'll talk about on my channel. And it's always been sort of really interesting to me that with all the discussion about, diamond distribution and the narrative around like our comic book selling, like, hey, they're doing really well, they're doing really poorly, and people go back and forth. To me, it's always been a very clear indicator that if you just look at the hot lists, that'll tell you what books are actually selling to fans, are actually getting into readers' hands. Because yes, you can say Absolute Batman. I mean, this is a bad example because I think a lot of people bought Absolute Batman. But if the headline is Absolute Batman sold 400,000 copies, we know that is in reference to how many comic shops ordered that many copies. We don't actually know, okay, did 400,000 users actually buy it and read it and love it? Again, Absolute Batman was generally loved by people, but I just kind of use it as a point that these hot lists will tell you. Like, they'll tell you which new comic books people are collecting, and you can deduce whether or not people are buying it for the cover or for the story. You know when Ultimate Spider-Man #1 sells really well, people are enjoying that story or whatever it is. So I think it's an interesting thing how the publishers seem so disconnected to, like, we'll call it boots on the ground, like finger on the pulse, like what is actually selling, what is actually moving. And I think that goes to, some of the things that you're expressing where it's like, how can you be the #1 selling artist with real people and they're not.
And again, I don't want to come across as like I'm crying about, hey, y'all ain't giving me. No, I've got plenty of work. I'm good. Monsters is doing great. Spawn's great. I got other things I'm doing. But I'm just saying it's weird, right? It's okay. When Peach Momoka came into the comic scene, as far as I know, because I wasn't really paying attention to comics, but from what I've gathered when I look back on it and what people have told me, everybody wanted her on their books, right? Everybody wanted a cover, and right now she's doing what X-Men over at Marvel, writing it and doing the illustrations. So it's just weird to me, though. It's like, so they were on the pulse of that, but that might have took over years, right? I don't know how long that took for her to, when she first got in the industry, to blow up and everybody, want to cover and stuff. But it's a weird disconnect that like you mentioned. I noticed when Monsters came out, not only did we sell, the 11,000 our first issue, and that sold out within hours of comic book stores. Because I was worried that, hey, with this sale, we was hoping with it coming out into September that by Halloween it would sell. So I was contacting like Golden Apple and other comic book stores that day. And I was like, because I don't know, I felt a responsibility for the book. And I was like, hey, is it selling okay for you? Is there anything I can do? You know, you go on a live stream or something to help you sell the book. And most of them said, hey, Mark, we were out within the hour. Midtown, it took them a little bit longer, but they were sold out by Monday. And then so it was sold out everywhere. Well, then that creates the aftermarket, right? Because then everybody's like, I got to go there. Number two was 14,000 issues. It sold out again that day because now everybody knew about it because it took 2 months. And those aftermarket again blew up. I think Midtown was out that night. So it was, the pre-orders weren't enough. So the 14,000. Okay. Now we go to number three. It was 37,000 pre-ordered through Diamond, 42,000 with exclusives and everything. And I just checked, Midtown is out of cover B. A lot of places are out of all of them. Midtown's a good indicator because, you know, they order probably the most of one single store because they're the biggest. But I would think, honestly, I think we're going to sell out of number three here in just a few more days because I've already had people reaching out saying, hey, Mark, I can't find it at my local comic book store. I'm having to drive 2 hours to find it and things like that. So, and the ones that are already, you know, on the aftermarket on eBay, they're higher. So people want to find it, you know, at cover price. So I really think number three will sell out. We're trying to find our ceiling. Like, is it 40,000 copies? Is that how many fans we have, you know, to read it? Is it 50? Is it 60? Is it 70? I know that, let's see, okay, it was February. Okay, so it was January 31st, I believe, is when they told me we had already had 31,000 pre-orders for issue 4, right? So that's 10. That was supposed to be 10 days before FOC, but they've extended FOC. King Spot did because of the whole Diamond issue, and I think we're moving distributors and stuff like that. So we believe that it's going to hit somewhere between the 50, 60 to 80 range, somewhere around in there. So, and again, that'll break records again. But I don't know. Go ahead.
You know, I mean, success well deserved. It's interesting. I want to take you back or go back to, like, I guess December, and let me paint it from my, you know, vantage point of you know, I'm familiar with your work. I loved it. Seeing the DC stuff and the Lobo, and it was you know, acutely aware to the work that you had been doing over the, you know, last year or two or so. But then you had the Kickstarter in December, and I'll just say this, like, I would make videos and I would post it, and whatever the topic was, I don't know, you know, something movie sold, whatever, and people would have the comments and they would just say their stuff. And every now and again, I would just see a comment that would say, like, yo, Swag, you got to talk about Mark Spears. You know, that's like how it started, right? And then later on, I do another video and it'd be like, Mark Spears is one of us. And I'd be like, what is this? What are they talking about? Like, this is a video about Fantastic Four, you know? And then it would be like some other thing. And now we just start to sort of to see it, to eventually where the point with Osmosis is like, oh, I'm feeling this, like, cultural wave or whatever this is.
It was, yeah,
and
it's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to be in that, but it's cool. It's a wonderful
Oh,
moment.
yeah.
And I guess my question is, like, you know, every overnight success is 15 years in the making. You know, like, what do you think it was about, was it this last Kickstarter and something about it that really took off for you? Or, like, can you pinpoint, like, what a turning point was? Was there just some interview you did or one cover that just, like, nothing other took off?
It was well, on that though, I want to say, like, when you said that Mark Spears is one of us, that's an odd thing because I get that a lot. I get it where they're writing those comments. Mark Spears is one of us. Mark Spears is like, we root for Mark Spears. And it's like I said, it's almost like Dusty Rhodes or something in wrestling, where he was the common man or something. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Is people heard my story of how it's weird that comics was kind of, now the word's gatekeeping, right? But it was held for me for so many years. It was held off from me because I tried to break in and in the 90s, and they were like, nope, you'll never be a comic book artist. So I started doing other things, concept art for Marvel and DC, for licensed properties and stuff like that. So it was a neat thing to come back around, because I thought comics and me won't ever be able to be on the same page, basically. And when I had success with my trading cards, that gave me the confidence. I said, I'm going to try one more time, just do one cover. I thought, wouldn't it be really cool to do a cover for like Spawn, and I could hang it on my wall, and I'll go back to doing, what I do, my trading cards and movie posters and stuff like that. And that was kind of what I thought. I never thought, oh, I'll get into comics and do all this. Now, this was the dream originally. I always wanted to be a top artist in comic books. That was always the goal. But you had to change your dreams, because the goal was just, they flat out refused you. I mean, it's like you're not going to be able to get into this. And even when I did my Spawn stuff, Thomas Healy looked at it and said, okay, I think we could do something here. Todd looked at it and said, I don't think this will translate well into comic books. He was what's the word, apprehensive or something at the very beginning. He was like, I don't know if this will work. Then he thought about it, and then he said, okay, let's give it a shot. And then they didn't look at any of my Spawn stuff I did some Spawn concepts, mock-ups of some covers. They liked the monster stuff, the monster portraits. So that's when they said, hey, we're going to do this whole thing with an artist spotlight, and you'll do 4 in a month. So that was they really took a risk of putting me at 4 covers in 1 month, right? Because the other guys was David Mack. It was guys already established for 30 years. I was the only new guy. Mark Brooks was right after me, I think, or right before. And, he's been in the industry forever. So they really had confidence that my stuff would do well, because I hadn't even turned it in yet when they decided to do the artist spotlight. But and I talked to Todd, and I said, man, I don't have any other work. No one will hire me. And he said, just wait. It's going to happen. But it did take a while. It took, so to your point, your question, last year I did 5 cover. Now we're in 25. In 23, I did the 4 Spawn, and I did a Headless Horseman. That's all that came out to retailers. I did a Power Ranger for New York Comic Con from Whatnot exclusive, right? That's all the covers I did that year. No one would hire me. I'd pitch things, pitch monsters. No one would take it. So all that time that I had free time, because no one would hire me, that's when I started doing Monsters, the comic book. So by that December of 23, I had 8 issues done, and did the Kickstarter. It did 57,000 for 8 issues. Pretty good. It's the highest ever for a single creator that I did everything. Didn't have a guest artist on like a cover or anything like that. But it still, it was okay. Didn't help though after that, taking it to publishers saying, hey, it made 57,000. How about publishing it? I don't want any money up front, just a 50-50 split on revenue. Everyone turned it down, except Keenspot. But the career still struggling into 24. I was working. I did some DC work. I love Paul Kaminsky over at DC. He's over all the non-Batman books. He gave me a chance to do covers over there, and I was doing covers. So 24 saw the Lobo, female Brainiac. I got to do some cool Superman ones. But again, nothing's taken off. Those and all those books are incentives, so people aren't seeing my stuff on the stands, right? It's only the aftermarket really that are seeing that at all, and nothing was taken off. Lobo got up to $50 for a couple of weeks, and then went down a little bit.
Right.
So I think my biggest book was it's really weird. It was like a special perfect storm. because they were ending Green Lantern War Journal, but they were going to give me a cover for it. And the cover was supposed to be an incentive. And then they said, no, we're just going to do it as a regular cover. So that got to go to comic book stores. Wasn't ordered a lot though, because again, I think it was number 12 of the series. It was the last book, and I think it was cover B or C or something. But it got it in comic book stores. So a lot of people, that was the first thing they ever saw of mine. And then right after that, you had Spawn 355 and 356 was coming out at that time too, all on the cover, on the stands. So these are, we're talking about, this is stuff is all like a month apart. King Spawn comes out, that has my cover on it. So now we have where I can go to the comic book store and I can see my stuff on the shelf. Does that help anything at that time? Not really, but I think it does help because those things were sitting on the shelves when in September we have Monsters come out. When Monsters #1 was picked up by King Spot, they said, we're not going to spend any advertising. We're not going to spend any marketing money or anything like that. We're just going to put it out there. And I couldn't blame them. I mean, I was like, yeah, because again, in my mind, with everybody passing on it, I thought, no one was going to like it. I thought the people who got it from the Kickstarter, they loved it. But I thought that's a small sample. That's about 300 people. I really liked it, but I thought, you know what? It must be a niche thing. And if all these other editors are passing on that, they must think it's really not that good. And, I was hoping if we could sell 10,000 copies, I thought, okay, that would be really cool. That would be like a higher tier book. But I didn't know if we would do that. I thought maybe about 4,000. I was hoping King Spot would break even on printing costs and stuff. But so then when that comes out and with 11,000 copies, and King Spot's like, hey, Mark, that's pretty good. 11,000 copies is really good. That beat their highest ever. They've been in business 25 years, and I think their highest ever was 5,000 copies for any issue. So they were like, Mark, but I'm like, 11,000. Other things are selling for, huge amounts. Saga sells 40,000 copies a month. I'm like, but I didn't think it was a hit, but I thought, oh, that's good. Some people will read it because the whole thing was I created this thing and I want people to read it and enjoy it. And I felt bad if it doesn't get out in the real world. So that's what changed though. When Monsters came out about a week later, like I said, it sold out within that day. And it was all like word of mouth. And I think that's still what's going on today is like when you were saying, you get the comment saying, Mark Spears, like, wow, people keep commenting on that. It's almost like this secret thing people found out about. They went, hey, this exists. It's like that movie you always search for on Amazon or somewhere. And you're like, you always want a movie to exist that you never heard about that is like going to be in your top 10 list. And you're like, oh my gosh, I never knew this existed. I love it. And I think that's what Monsters was to people. A lot of them weren't aware of it. And then they championed it on. Again, there's still not been $1 spent in advertising for Monsters to this day.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the the underground band that people are genuinely excited to share with their friends.
That's a great analogy of that. That's it. Because
it really felt like that. And that's when there's genuine fandom for the product, which, and I'm sure at this point now people are excited about, the aftermarket values and things like that. But at the same time, I think what you really saw was like that grassroots effort of people like hopping onto it and being excited about the material. And I'm curious about it because I have my own thoughts, like coming from, screenwriting and I can imagine what some of the conversations were, but if you're willing to share, when you take a property like Monsters to publishers, are they just dismissing it because it's Universal Monsters? We've kind of seen this before, no one's going to be interested. Yet it's so clearly obvious to me that there's such a passion for this type of material, especially when covering comics and pulps and all this type of stuff. Like, I'm curious what some of the feedback that you got with it when you were sending it to publishers, if they just didn't like the material itself, and how validating is it that people in fact actually do like it?
That's when I first was going to pitch it. My wife was like, "That's the feedback you're going to get, exactly what you said," because she said
Mm.
they're going to say it's not original enough because these are derivative characters from literature, or Universal's done it, Hammer's done it, and you're just, so she was saying, that's why the Slayer is in there, to be something different. Plus, I got a sprinkle of other characters in there too, and the monsters is really about 10% of the what we call Universal monsters in there. But so that's what I thought I would get back. Right, that's the feedback I thought I would get. No, uh, the feedback was either a flat out no, we're not interested, or I would say 50% of them did not like the art. They would
Mm.
say the art's interesting, and that's all they would say. So and then they would say, like, what's your process? Because so they didn't understand it. They didn't, they didn't go like, hey, we love it. So honestly, I think the art hurt it with a lot of publishers. Now, Dark Horse took it all the way to committee. They voted on it. They were going to do 4 issues of it. And man, I really thought we had it there, but that was right. I think 2 weeks before that announcement, where their parent company had lost billions and stuff, and not much got voted through on that meeting, they said. So, but also, if you think about it, they had Count Crawley over there, and I don't know if they really wanted it because, again, it's a monsters. They already have a title similar to that with Count Crowley. Even though it's different, it's still a horror book. So, and again, I'm not a name to bank on at all. It ain't like they go, well, we don't know, the artwork's okay, the story's okay, but Mark will help sell it because he's a
Right.
name value. I'm not. So, but that is weird. I thought that would happen with now that could be what they were thinking. They just didn't say it. A lot of people say that's maybe why Image passed on it. They already had Universal monsters, but I try to make it totally different from the Universal monsters, their properties. Like, just an example, like Frankenstein is the whole electricity, the bolts, and all that stuff. Mine, you'll see in Monster and the Wolf, the prequel series, it's all like a serum that brought the monster to life. It's not using that. My Dracula is not, that's not his real name. He just steals the name from Vlad the Impaler, and his true name will come out a little bit later. And when you see who he is, that's a big, huge secret reveal that'll happen in issue 8. So a lot of these things, I just sit there and I said, okay, I'm going to use these things that people are familiar with, but I'm putting a spin on them, and I'm going to change them up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's people like that. I just saw like the Wolfman movie the other day, the last night, from Blumhouse and Universal.
Mhm.
And have you seen it yet?
I haven't actually, no.
Okay, it's I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's they do a different take on it. It's not a Wolfman that you, just like they did a different take on the Invisible Man. If you saw that one with it was
Mhm.
not a serum. They do a totally different take on it too, and it didn't do well in the box office. And I think because you still have to do that nostalgia, you don't want to change stuff too much, and it's a fine line there, right?
Yeah.
If you change it too much, people go, I don't recognize this person. This is not
Yeah.
that character to me. So
Well, there's an interesting phenomenon kind of going on with media as a whole. Uh, if you ever enter uh, into like the gaming buildings, and like you listen to like executives over there talking about this stuff, the term they throw around is it's a black hole game. And where I'm going with all this is there's so much media these days
mhm.
that people are always vying for each other's attention, but and trying to get like the movie is competing with the comic book, that's competing with the video game, that's competing with the Instagram influencer reel. Like everyone's competing, and the companies are constantly thinking like, oh, we have to reinvent the wheel, or it's, hey, we don't want to do universal models. We have to do something fresh to like stand out and stuff. And actually what a lot of the tech companies are starting to discover is that that's actually not the case. What we need to be doing is indexing more on like, hey, people really like this genre and we should cater to that genre. And because we know that it works and people want to live in that world and they want to kind of, hear stories within those spaces and be somewhat familiar but of course get Mark's spin on it. And that's what you're kind of starting to see. You had a lot of people doing entertainment things that were way super high concept, like super, different spins. And really, I think people are just looking for, I call it the bit, like, give me the bit. I know what I want to see. I want to just be taken through that ride and that experience. And I'll be so happy if you can deliver that. And so I don't know, it's kind of an interesting world we are in with the media space. And I think when people get into these boardrooms and they talk about ideas, they probably overthink a lot of things as opposed to like, hey, this guy's doing this book. He knows the material. He's passionate about it. The art's great. Story's cool. Let's ride.
That's what I was waiting on someone to tell me, but I think it all worked out for the best, because I love it over at King Spot right now. They're awesome, and who knows if it had come out through Dark Horse, if it had come out through Image or Boom or whoever, would it have done the same thing? I think that's another thing. People are championing the book because they're like, wait, this book is on the top 10 list. And it's a company no one ever even heard of before. King Spot was very, very low on the tier of people knowing who they are. They had done "Marry Me," which was turned into a movie and stuff, but they were doing a lot of parody stuff, and I think it really helped them. But it made it look like I put it the analogy of something like when you play like a video game and you say, hey, it's a sports game, you say, I want to take the team, like the worst ranked team, and I'm going to create this player, put it on it. Now I'm going to be the number one team, Yeah. And I love that story to where we're beating out Marvel books. We're beating out DC books. I beat out Absolute Batman a couple of times on the top 10, and I just giggle because it's just, it's just hilarious. This little independent book published by someone who a lot of people don't know did that well. And I hope it keeps going and keeps doing that.
I mean, it's definitely inspiring. I mean, and it's, you deserve all the success and everything that comes with it. I am curious though, what you think about the fact that here you are, you got your product, you got your book, you sell it, on the Kickstarter, or it has a tier or whatever. And then you go on eBay and it's like, hey, this sold for like 10x, like what's up with that? And I'm curious if like how you feel about it from like the creator standpoint. Is it cool to you that it sells for more in the secondary market, or you, and I'll give you permission, like this is not a greed thing. Are you sort of like, damn, I should have charged that? How do you feel about that?
At first it was really cool because I'm like, someone came to me and they said, Mark, this is weird because you can walk into a store and buy your book the day of release, take it home and get $6, and then I could take it home and get $30 for it. That's never happened. Like where the book could still be and then I can the next day go back and buy another one and do it. They said because the demand is so high like that. It's like a Power Rangers Cabbage Patch Kid kind of weird thing like that. I don't really understand it because if the comic is still at the retailer, that it can be going for that much on eBay. It was at first when the Kickstarter started blowing up, where they were selling, like I would just mail one out, and we're talking about a month later, the guy was selling a book that I charged $22 for, and he was getting $700 for it. And I'm like, you know what? Those people believed in me. There's only 300 people that backed that one. More power to them. I was like, let them have that. Because it has happened in the past with trading cards and stuff too. When I would do that, they would flip them for double or triple the money. But I look at it as, hey, they invested their money when other people said, no, I'm not, it's not worth it to me to buy that book for 22, and was able to flip it for 700. There's some of them that there's guys that got like the complete everything for like $1,000, and that stuff is probably worth 10,000 now on the aftermarket. So, I feel obligated when I'm fulfilling those orders. I'm like, man, these people, they invested their time and money into this. So I want to make sure they get a great product and stuff. But
Right.
it's really weird, the aftermarket. I wish I had time to sit there and because I got lots of comp copies of stuff I could put out there and everything. And hopefully soon I'll be able to create my own little side business of have some people run it where they, have like, because like Apex blew up. Well, I got a couple of Apex comp copies, like a medal and stuff.
Don't say that right now. We can't let people know that there's more on the census.
Oh no, I'm sorry. No, I don't have it.
You guys see the eBay account, not Mark Spears selling comp copies. You'll know that.
I got people write me when that stuff was happening, like say December. Of course, I can't say when it's at its peak because it's still going on the aftermarket. I don't even check it anymore. I don't even look. I've got to where I don't even check cover price anymore. Somebody writes me and tells me, Mark, you on it again? Because after a while, it's like, I'm on it again. I'm on it. I don't think there's been, I think they said that's a record that since Monsters came out, there hasn't been a week that I wasn't on the top 10 with something. Mm-hmm. Return of the Living Dead or Spawn or Monsters or something. So that's crazy. But but on the aftermarket, I've got to where I don't even check it, but I know there's stuff going for really high. Oh yeah, my point was someone had wrote me saying they sent me a thing that someone screenshot from Twitter that said Mark Spears is manipulating the aftermarket. There were all these rumors that it was me. So I must be this rich billionaire buying up all my books, buying them back. And I'm like, I'm just, that's the way it is though. But again, it's just amazing. I love it. I hope it still retains that value because I don't want people getting those things and then going, oh man, it's not worth as much now or something like that. But I think as long as I keep continue to do good work, it'll
everything is always going to ebb and flow. That's just the nature of it.
It'll go down a little bit and go up. Yeah.
Do you think that you have kind of this outlook, and maybe this, I'm curious if this informs your creativity, like, because you used to have a comic book store, if I'm correct. So you kind of come from the retail world and you're in the comic books, and you're one of the few creators who, again, shout out to Brian, is like watching Beyond Wednesdays and tuned into the shows and things like that. I wonder if it's like, one, the disconnect I think there is with a lot of creators and publishers to, like, again, the community and like, the grassroots efforts is bigger than I think it should be. And then also, do you think that like having one foot in it is sort of helps you inform your creativity?
Oh, definitely. Because I know it from all sides now. It has been about 20, let's say I let that go about 2001. So about 24 years since I had a store. But even before I owned that store, I worked there as a manager, and then I worked there as an employee. So I'd worked there for years, and then I worked at Service Merchandise before that. So I knew retail experience. I knew comic book retail. I knew ordering from Diamond and other distributors. I learned how stuff sits on the shelves, and like you said earlier, the numbers that they sell to comic book stores aren't really the numbers that are selling. The sell all the way through, because we would have boxes of books that were like, that's back stock now, or they need to have overflow back stock. They need to have warehouse back stock because you got too much. So yeah, knowing all that, and then getting into the comic industry, and then knowing like cover rates that they're paying now and stuff, which is crazy. When I wanted to get in the industry back in the 90s, they were kind of transparent. I remember reading a Marvel Age. If you remember those Marvel Age, they would talk about stuff. they would list how much artist would make, penciler, inker, and for a page and a cover. And that's when I decided, okay, I love comic art. I want to be a comic artist. This sealed the deal then, because I know I can make a living on that. What's sad is that was probably 91, 92. To this day, now in the industry, those numbers are probably cut in half. And that's crazy. We're what, 30 years later, and we're getting paid half the rates. That's shocking to me. And I'm open about that kind of stuff, which a lot of people aren't, because I think it needs to be known, how much someone gets for this or that, because a lot of people just presume, oh man, you had this cover, man. I bet that made you a lot of money. And when they realize that only made me a couple $100, they're just shocked. Someone's making money, but who is it? But I try to keep my pulse on, what's going on with like collectors. One thing that's kind of weird though, before the first Kickstarter in 23, I did not like variant covers, right? I was sitting there and somebody asked me about the monsters. And I said, that one cover, we're going to do one cover. Well, I did it. I did the one cover. I set up my whole Kickstarter. And then I started thinking, wait a second. I'm known for covers. That's what I do in the industry. Maybe I should do a few more. And I ended up doing like 30 covers. Yeah. I'm my worst enemy on that, because I don't like too many covers. I think that's kind of crazy. But with monsters, and I've asked my fans, they're like, no, Mark, we like these, because I'm putting out 5 normal covers, and they like them.
I think in fairness to the variant cover situation is like, I understand from the collector point of view where it's like, if it becomes oversaturated, it becomes, it's like, it's almost too much. But I think the idea of variants being like, here's a different flavor on a cover, I think that's the best way to do it. And so, and I will give you credit where it's like, here is just different options that are cool. I think sometimes it gets a little crazy when people do the variants and it's like, here's the virgin, and then here's the black and white version, and then here's the foil, and then it's the same thing, but it's just, this versus like a completely different art piece. I think that's totally okay. But that's
I try to do that and also I guess I'm the only one who does it where I'm the only artist doing the variants. So it is.
That's true.
I was thinking about this yesterday. It's almost like because I come from the trading cards of the monsters. It's almost like it's almost like I'm putting out 5 trading cards on the covers, which sometimes the artwork for these exclusives are actually trading card artwork that I've just put on there because I didn't have time to do a new piece. So it is that way. I think a lot of people are like, hey, I like these. I'm going to get out of these 5, I might get these 3, or I might get this 1. And so far it's been fine doing those 5. We do also a foil flip, and then I think they do an incentive and a metal. Those I tried at the beginning to make those different, right, with different artwork. Now it's harder because my schedule, and those might drop. I might be like, I don't know if I really want to keep the metal or the foil, stuff like that. But the 5 I like. If I ever went down, I would only go down to maybe 4 of the normal. But so far, like I said, everybody likes it. It also keeps the print run kind of low if you think about it. Even at 42,000 copies, some of those 5 was only printed like 3,000 times, right? Yeah. So because it was pick low, so that 3,000, man, that's very low, in for a number for a comic book that's very successful right now. If you can go, oh man, there's only 3,000, and we print. I don't know if I got one in here. We print in the back of the book the print numbers on everything, because I think that's great. KeenSpot already had done that, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. Let's be transparent. So they'll say like there's only 3,400 of this issue. If there's a foil of it or something, they'll say how many foils it was and all that. So
yeah, well, I think it's I think that's good to be aware of why collectors like that stuff and why they like knowing print counts and all of that. And, even it makes sense to me why Todd McFarlane would want to work with you and why he found you, because he's always come off as someone to me who's also very aware of how collectors
Yes.
think, and he's very in tune to like, hey, I'm going to sign this, but I'm only going to use the gold pen to sign this so that that I signed only this at New York or whatever it is. And even if that stuff is, not that big a deal, I think he thinks about it, and I think his fans appreciate it. And I think a lot of creators should be very in tune to the collector mindset.
Todd's awesome, and I try to pick up all those bits and pieces that he has of things like that, because I wish I could charge only $2.99 for monsters. I would in a heartbeat if I could do that. I love that he only has 2 covers or 3 every month. That's really cool. He also doesn't do exclusives for stores. Some of those things I had to do just to keep monsters on the right momentum, and maybe one day I can, scale back and be able to cut the price and stuff like that. But he has one of the greatest business minds for comics, toys, and all that. And I love him to death, and I'm just trying to, everything that he can tell me, I'm just trying to put in my head and carry on with that. But yeah, that's a weird thing with Todd, because that was my hero growing up, and to actually get to work with him and to do like you said, business stuff with him, not just comic stuff, just pick up all those little bits and pieces. That was a dream come true. Spawn 77 is going to be amazing. A little nervous about it. It's more nerve-wracking than when I was doing monsters, because man, so many people are looking forward to the Spawn 77, and I want to make it just amazing. So yeah, getting a little nervous, but I'll have like first 7 pages done in 11 more days, because they have to have them for something.
Nice.
So
well, I know everyone's looking forward to that. And yes, this is I guess you could call it, it's like one thing to kind of create monsters and sort of be siloed and being in the own creative space. It's another thing. It's like, now you're on Spawn. It's sort of this is a Monday Night Football game. More people are watching in that.
More eyes will be on me. And also when you're working with other people, it's just a little different, because Todd's going to help. I wrote the plot. Todd's now going to help write, I guess, some of the dialogue. And, if we see the plot going in one direction, we might keep going that way if we like it or something. But it's just because when you're collaborating with other people, there might be something that he goes, I don't really like that. Let's not do that. So that's a little different. But Todd is, if you're an artist, he's the best guy to work with, because if it looks cool, he'd be like, keep that. I like it. Mm-hmm. And he'll never make you redo anything. He knows, he'll give you pointers saying, look, next time you do something like this, you might want to do this, this, and this. But he knows how long it took to make that piece. He don't want you to redo that whole thing and stuff. Right. So, but he's awesome to work with as an artist. And I can't wait to see what we pull off 6 months from now when it's all done and everything.
Yeah, good creative feedback is a really underappreciated skill, I think, in any creative industry. I am curious, like, going back to you having had a shop and being kind of a retailer and diving in the Kickstarter space, but also working for, at least DC, one of the big twos and all that. I guess, what's your maybe sort of outlook on comics today? Even with Diamond folding or going with the bankruptcy that they're dealing with and the distribution issues, outside of even monsters and your own product, where do you see the comic industry these days?
It's a lot worse than it was in 2001 mm-hmm. when I quit doing retail. I was kind of shocked. Again, I don't remember the last comic book I had. I don't even remember the last time I went to a comic book store before I started getting back into comics in 23. It'd probably been 10 years or so, or if I bought some, I bought it online. So I was kind of shocked where the industry was when I came in March of 23. I was like, whoa, they let it get to this. And honestly, mm-hmm. March 23 was a boom period, right? The trajectory was going down, and then COVID happens, things start going up because, people are staying home. They had more money to spend on comics and stuff like that. So, and then back issues started going up and everything. But I was shocked because one, back when I run the store, there was no second printing of something unless it was massive, right? Like Turtles. I remember what it was like the Dark Knight book or something, that the regular ongoing series of Batman, that, or Shadow or something, I can't remember, that had a second printing. It was rare for you to ever have a second printing of something. Nowadays, everything, if it sells out in the store, gets a second printing, a third printing, a fourth printing. That was shocking to me. Another thing was when you ordered from like DC, Marvel, there was one cover. Every now and then, there might have been a special cover where it was not even foil, but it might have been like glow in the dark or something, like a Ghost Rider cover or something. But that was still the normal cover usually. Um, so that was shocking. It looked to me like we we realized we only have this many fans, and that's so they realized how much money they capped out at, and then they said, okay, but if we make every issue is 10 covers, then we will raise our profits. It ain't gonna cost that much to print 10 covers of the same book. And that's what they did. And that's sad, because once you go down that route, it's you can't really regain your stuff back. And I think
Yeah,
Marvel and
can't
DC
put the
did
genie
that.
back in the bottle.
Yeah, you can't unfire the gun, and it's unring the bell and all those things. The incentive covers wasn't a thing back in when I owned a store. The incentives are kind of neat, but I was talking to one store when I was doing a signing. That guy says, hey, I sell my incentives for cover price. He said, I do it just as a favor to my customers. And I said, well, how do you do that? If you only have like one. And he said, we rotate them around. Like if it's a Batman incentive, he rotates it around to the different ones. So those things, though, could be okay in the industry if done correctly. Um, don't overdo it. Like you were saying, the whole thing with doing covers where it's the same art, but it's a different color or a foil or a virgin. And then there's, maybe retro trade dress and regular trade dress. All those things, I think that doesn't enhance anything at all. So the industry is kind of odd. The Kickstarter thing is interesting, where you can crowdfund comics. And then now, because I was keeping up with that, was because I was doing crowdfunding for trading cards. Then I saw regular publishers, I think it was Dynamite has done it, Boom, where they do the crowdfunding, and also still
Oh, yeah.
go to comic stores. And that was interesting. So I studied that a while. I remember I got a lot of feedback when I did Monsters in 23 on Kickstarter from retailers writing me going, where's your retailer tier? Are you keeping retailers out of this? And I was like, I don't want to sell a comic book for $22 to a retailer. I think that's insane, right? I don't think, because I know how a retailer is. They need to get that book at $2, $3, right? At the maximum. And I was telling them, I said, look, I could do a thing where we could do half, but I could sell it to you for $10. And they were, you're crazy. I can't sell no book for $20 of yours. So I had come up with this system, though, because I wanted retailers to help me with Kickstarter. Because you got to think, one retailer could make my Kickstarter for me by sitting there telling all of their subscribers and everything, hey, Mark's got a Kickstarter. Why don't you go over there? And because I at that time I think we ended with 300 backers. I probably had 100 at that time. So I wrote all these retailers that I knew and said, I will, every book that someone buys from me that says this is my comic store, right? Well, on the notes or whatever, I will give you the same thing that they ordered. So you can then sell for free. And I would even pay the shipping so you can sell it at your store. I got zero offers on that. They were like, nope. So yeah, retailers did not help me out at all on the Kickstarter, the first one. On the second one, I found out some retailers actually backed it as a regular backer because they realized, hey, we could sell this for a lot more money in our store. So now I do take it back. Some retailer, there was one in Georgia I'm good friends with. They bought an ad in the first one, and then I'll also bought it. I don't know if it's a personally or whatever. Bought a complete set of the first one. So, but I don't know. There's a thing, and I think retailers and Kickstarter, there's a problem there. They look at it as competition. Some of them don't though. Like I forget who Emmett on Brian's show was sitting there going, "Look, I don't care. That's a different audience. That's not hurting at all." And that's how they should look at it. A guy that's not going to go do. Someone's not going to go buy a $22 book or 25 from me on Kickstarter and then go, "Well, I'm not going to my comic book store this week." That's not happening.
Yeah. I think the Kickstarter audience, they want something that feels a little more intimate or bespoke. You know, they know that they're getting it from you, so it's a little different than the retail crowd that goes to the LCS and stuff. But at the same time, I think I think the comic shops and stores are just really busy, you know, and just kind of going back to like the Diamond thing, I think they're just a little more conditioned and trying to just keep the lights on by like ordering in the catalog. And if it's just not in the catalog, I just don't know if they have like the mental bandwidth to like focus on Kickstarter stuff. But you know, with Diamond going down and all of the kind of sort of the sudden change in the market, it does sort of feel like retailers and the Kickstarter creators, especially as you mentioned, if the publishers are doing it more on Kickstarter, see, it feels like there's going to need to be a little more connection and synergy there in the future.
I would love it if I think there should be a way to involve everybody. Because if you could do a crowdfunding, I don't know if it'd be Kickstarter or starting your own thing, or maybe it's Indiegogo, who knows, but where comic stores are involved in it, where you're not even going to pick it up, where I'm shipping it to you, you're going to your comic book store to pick it up, right? So that involves them. You can give that store a discount, however it works, but then you have all these stores. That would be a huge crowdfunding campaign. Maybe that will happen one day, because just all it's going to take is somebody smart enough to go, "Look, I'm a big creator. Everybody wants these books I'm going to do. Let's cut in all these retailers that are struggling, you know, to do things. We'll cut them in and give them, you know, 40% on this, but we need it." And then they only have to ship to that store. So that's even better on the shipping and everything. I think that might happen. Someone might be smart enough to say, "Hey, I'm going to do that because that will raise the most money." I don't know. But again, back in 25 years ago, 24 years ago, when I owned the store, I was going to Walmart buying things to resell in my store. Like there was action figures, and I would charge like $1 more because I wanted them to be used to go into my store to pick it up, right? Where even if it's just $1 I'm making. At that time, we're talking around 2000, comic stores I would go into were weird places, just back issues and new stock, right? That's it. So I come up with it. I said, "Dude, I want it to be like a movie theater when you walk into my store." I bought a counter from CVS, which is going out of business, and had it stocked with all kinds of candy. We got a distributor of Pepsi Cola, so we had a big refrigerator and all that. So we made it a place to where, hey, it's an event. When you go into our store, besides the comics, you're going to have all these toys and stuff that we would get off of either eBay, Diamond, you know, would do toys, or we would get older things that we'd buy collections. We'd have that. So even back then, we were doing what some stores now are just pivoting to. And I'm just shocked. Like, I thought everybody did that back then, because we were getting in superhero shirts back then through a distributor because Walmart wasn't carrying them, right? When Walmart starts carrying a Superman shirt, you're not going to sell it in your store. So it shocks me that they haven't caught up to that. There was that great store. What was it? It was like GameStop. It was the sister store, Movie Stop. Did you ever go in one of those?
Is that what it was called? I don't remember it.
I think it was Movie Stop. But what happened was they pivoted from movies. They realized with the streaming happened, movies ain't
the
going to
blockbuster video model doesn't work. Yeah.
So they stopped doing selling, because their whole thing was just selling movies, not renting them. And then, but they would buy old collections. It was the GameStop model of buying stuff cheap, selling it high. But they realized, hey, this ain't working. They started carrying comic books. About the last year of their run, they would carry brand new comics, backstock, statues, figures, all kinds of merchandise of comic stuff. And it was half their store, and the other half would be, old movies that you could get like a DVD for like $3 or $4 and stuff, like Blu-rays, collections like you get Lost and stuff like that. Which now all that is streaming. Back then, not everything was streaming. So that was a neat model though, because I was like, man, a mainstream store like this. Well, then right after that, after they closed up, FYE starts doing. If you've ever been at FYE, they pivoted again and started carrying, more like anime kind of stuff. They're doing horror stuff, and then the comic book stuff. But I'm just shocked no one sit there and has come up with like, hey, we could do a comic book store, we could franchise this, but we carry, half the store would be toys and T-shirts and stuff like that. Pop figures, that might have run its course, but you could carry things that nature. I'm just shocked. If I had the time, if I wasn't doing comic books and stuff, I'd get a store tomorrow and start trying to dominate with it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why they're not doing things like that. Now it's hard to get people.
I think
online, it's hard.
I think they're going to be forced to start exploring these things. I think that this is going to be the year where people are like, oh man, we got a new models, new everything. And I made a video earlier this year on January 1st where I do my predictions. It's just sort of like, oh, here's what I'm going to guess is going to happen. And I mentioned that, Kickstarter being a big deal. And what I actually said was I thought that there was going to be some Kickstarter issues because I see all the publishers going over to Kickstarter. But anyways, I bring that all up because I think that as the publishers continue to go maybe more direct to consumer, especially with all the distributor issues going down, I think that there's going to have to be more retailer connection, publisher changing business models. All that stuff is gonna happen this year because they're going to be forced to do it. So we'll have to see. But
I think you're right. I think you're right 100% because you couldn't sustain a comic book. I know a comic book store here locally about 45 minutes from me. Shocked me when I went in there. I was doing a signing and I said, where's your backstock? He goes, we're 100% all new stuff. That's all. And I said, you could survive on new stuff? I was shocked me because, again, back in the day, our new stuff was maybe 30% of our sales. And he was like, yeah, Mark, I'm able to do 100% only on new stock. And it floored me. I saw him again about a year later. I did another signing over there when Monsters came out. And he says, yeah, we're still doing good, all new stuff. And more power to him. I was like, that's amazing. But he has enough customers to do that. A lot of them don't have enough new customers to do that. Now, I understand that. But I think they're going to have to pivot. They're going to have to do online sales, carry other things. But you're right. Publishers are going to move more to crowdfunding. It just makes so much more money direct to consumer. I mean, hopefully, I'm probably going to make my own retail store here soon and do exclusives myself. So to where I can sell exclusives for Monsters through my own website. So
well, the retailers who maybe are listening, they'll hopefully on the next Kickstarter you'll have a retailer tier specific.
Whenever I can. Again, I love retailers. Retailers again are champion monsters. It's a thing where they. I've had so many retailers write me and said, "Hey, Mark, you really have helped our store out because." With the price point of being $6, right? So that's they get it for about $3. So they're making about $3 on Monsters and it's selling out. They don't want books to sit there and not sell out.
Of course.
So they're happy with it. They're getting more renewed interest. I've been getting a lot of people write me saying, hey, I was out of comics for 10 years, or I've never read a comic book before, but I went in because I heard about this. So I'm just tickled to death on that because if I can help retailers and help fans find something like that, that's amazing. But again, if there's anything I can do to help retail, I want to do it. with either a Kickstarter tier. I've even thought about doing. I had this idea. I was going to give out, like, if a retailer would take a picture of their monster display, I was going to give out some stuff, right? Pick like 10 of them to do. And I asked some retailers about that, and they said, "Mark, we can't make a display. It's never here." So maybe now with number 3 or with when number 4 comes out, I'll do something like that. But
Yeah.
again, I want to
I
help
think
retailers.
I think every retailer would say, yeah, just keep making good work that sells. That'll help us out plenty, you know? So I
I
think
think
that even
that's
just
it.
that,
Yeah.
but, I'm curious, Mark, before I kind of wrap up here and let you go, I am curious, like, I really do sort of see your story as, incredible, at least in terms of this explosion in the last year. It's inspiring to me as someone who is a creator myself. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people who, who are watching this and are either artists or they've worked in comics or they love comics. I'm curious if you have any advice for them, in terms of how you've been able to branch out or persevere through your craft.
Well, I would say just keep, you keep at it long enough. But then, like the great Tom McFarlane has said, if you do it so long for like 20 years and you're still trying to break in, then there's probably a problem there. Because you probably need to change careers. But if I'd have done that, I mean, honestly, it's like a string of luck. I was giving up on art totally. I was done. I was gonna put down my pen in 20 because of I was like, I just couldn't get any work. My prints and stuff wasn't selling. I didn't want to do the whole con thing and have to travel and sell stuff. So I was going to be finished with it all. And then COVID happens. I'm at home and I was like, I'm going to draw some of my monsters I've always wanted to. I do enough of those. People are giving me feedback online and say, man, we like this. I do maybe 20 in a month. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to do trading cards of these. I'll do something with them. That led to the crowdfunding. That led to the trading cards coming out. And then it got voted second best scary set by Beckett magazine, and then of all time. And then that led to different things. Todd McFarlane's right. Success leads to success. So after that happens, I get the Spirit Halloween movie poster. I get to do that. My stuff appears in the movie. Right after that happens, I think that's when Spawn happened. After the Spawn 4 comics, Svengoolie thing happens where they're like, hey, you want to do this thing where we'll put you on a t-shirt and talk about you for a month. So I was like a Svengoolie on MeTV thing, featured artist, I guess it was called, for a month of July. Then it led to other comics and stuff. But again, I thought that was going to be the cap of my career. I was like, okay, I don't think I can go past that. I can't, because again, there was a ceiling there that people wouldn't let me through. But what I've learned is, and this would be my advice, when people, if you really think you have something good there, like your own product, your own whatever, don't let them just say no. Find a way to do it yourself. Because, and I would always tell people, if they won't give me a way, I'll make my own way. Crowdfunding is huge right now to where it can give you that. And you might not make a lot of money on crowdfunding, but if it can make you enough to get the printing cost, or, for trading cards or for the comic book or whatever, that's huge. So you're not having to use your own money to even get it printed. But just, you gotta, if you're gonna ever take a gamble on yourself. If they tell you no, just keep going at it. But and it's tough. It's a long road, but man, it's so worth it when you finally get there. I'll turn 50 this year, and I didn't think it would take this long to finally be in comic books and to be one of the, I'll put quotes, the hot artist in comics. But man, it was, I wouldn't change anything. I would have loved to have been in it when I was in my 20s. But I think what is happening now, it's everything I learned on that long road I took is finally paying off. being a concept artist helps with what I do now. I think that's why people like my monsters is the concepts of them too. So being a concept artist helped, working in the trading card field helped, working on magazine covers helped, working on sports posters and stuff helped. So all those things make up a Mark Spears, and I think that's why everything's working right now. So, but keep at it.
Well,
Keep at it.
Well, we're glad you're here. You know, we're definitely all big fans of you. As the people have said, Mark is one of us, and so
Yes.
we I think a lot of people have kind of felt your success as being their own. So super happy for you, and I hope it's continued. And we're definitely going to look forward to all the work you got coming out in the future. But you know, in case people don't know where they can find you, maybe you can just let the people know best way to kind of stay on top of all the things you got going on.
Mark Spears Art at Instagram. Then I think there's Mark Spears Art on Facebook. There's also Mark Spears Monsters on Facebook. Twitter, I think, is Mark Spears Art. And I have a Discord. I don't know what it's called. I think it's just called, let me go look at it. Mark Spears Monsters. But you can search around and find the Discord too. So
all right. Well, definitely go check that out. I'll put some links in the description. But Mark, thanks again for taking up, you know, some of your afternoon here. I know you're a busy man. You got to go start drawing some covers. So I got to let you go. But, thanks again for hanging out, and we'll see you on the next show.
All right, man. Thank you.